Hi guys, thank you for clicking on if you clicked on for this reading. I wanted to come on and I really wanted to speak out about what has been going on with me for the past year, a little over a year actually, and kind of explain my side of it. There's been a lot of information coming from sources that, were representing stuff in a misconstrued way. So we're going to start off. I debated on how I wanted to do this, but I'm going to be doing multiple videos. So this is just going to be the first one. If you guys have any questions, because again, there's a lot of information, you can leave a comment, feel free, and I can elaborate on anything that you really want to know about. I have been taking, again, a time out for the past year, just kind of trying to do some healing. It's been a stressful year, to say that. And so I didn't really want to, I didn't feel strong enough at the time to even come on and really clarify what was going on. But I guess let's get started, shall we? So I guess about 2 years ago, I was living in Leeds, Alabama with my daughter. And we had an apartment. I'm going to try not to really look at the camera because if I look at the camera, I'm just going to look at how I'm looking and stuff. So, anyways, so about 2 years ago, me and my daughter were living in Leeds, Alabama. And at the time, I had just gone through a pretty rough breakup, and I wasn't even trying to date. Okay, let's just put it that way. And I was starting on my tarot business. Me and my daughter had a place out there. We were doing well. I was in the process of moving. We were trying to find a house, and I just bought another vehicle. Me and my daughter were kind of traveling at the time. And I got a message from a guy on Plenty of Fish. Okay? And his name would be Robert Gray. Okay? He sent me a message, and we started chatting. Now, again, there's so much information. But pretty much, I was not on the dating scene. So I had started doing my tarot online, and I was practicing doing it online, doing readings for people. And I would do the lives and do, again, free readings. And it was kind of in my bio, like I even said, I wasn't trying to date, and it was kind of like a non-disclosure that I was just on there trying to practice on my gifts and abilities, and I was willing to give, readings for free, if somebody wanted a reading. So I was doing that. It was becoming successful. I also had a tarot business on the side that I was getting started. And this guy reached out to me, Bobby Gray. So he reached out, was interested. Now on my radius, on the POF, again, I put on my bio that I was not looking to date. Okay, my bio, I shouldn't have. It was supposed to be like a 30-mile radius, which is typical for me. If I get online, that's what I'll do. And he was in Lebanon, Tennessee. So we started talking. He was wanting to kind of jump into a relationship really quick. Not a relationship, but he was kind of forceful about like wanting to meet up, but whatever. I guess it wasn't forceful. It was just kind of like a little unbecoming, I was like kind of like red flagged out, but not too much where I was like not going to talk to him, because the guy was really sweet to me on the phone, and we had done some FaceTimes and stuff, and I thought, well, let me, this guy seems nice enough. And I had little time to travel at that time. So at the time, he didn't have a vehicle. Like, I don't know if he had, I guess he had a vehicle, or no, he didn't. He didn't have a vehicle. No, he did have that Honda, but he couldn't drive. He had just got a DUI not too long ago that he had mentioned, casually mentioned, and said, I can't drive down there, but I would be willing to take you out if you wanted to come up here. And I was like, yeah, well, I had time to kill. And again, the guy seemed nice enough and said, I'll pay for your gas and everything and take you out. And so my daughter was at her father's that weekend. And I decided to go up there. I did go up there, and I spent a whole weekend up there. We had a fairly good time. And I started not necessarily catching feelings, but I had a good enough time to kind of, you know what I'm saying, to let things kind of continue to pursue. I went back home, and we continued to talk, you know. We hadn't talked. Things kind of moved pretty quickly. At the time, he had a roommate. He was in his father's house. His father had just passed. So again, I didn't know any of this information when I went that weekend. So I didn't know that his father had just passed. I don't think he had mentioned any of that to me. I didn't know anything about this house that he had inherited. Because again, his father had passed and he had inherited a house. I did not know any of this. So I didn't go up there with having any of this kind of information. All I knew was he had a roommate. I met that roommate that weekend. And again, we hung out and whatever. So I go back home, and he begins to it starts to move a little bit too quickly. I'm going to be honest with you. Things just kind of felt like he started sending things to my house, like sending coffees and Dunkin' Donuts, and then was sending money. Do you know what I'm saying? And again, I'm not really used to all that kind of stuff, but I'm not going to say I didn't enjoy it. I thought it was very thoughtful, but it was a little odd for me. At the time, I didn't realize that I was kind of being love bombed, you know? And again, that was several years ago. I really didn't stand in my truth as much as I do now. It's not that I didn't feel something, my intuition, but I just didn't, I should have seen the red flags for what they were. Let's just say that. So now my phone, sorry guys. So he started sending stuff to the house, and I think he made a trip up there. He took like a Greyhound one weekend, and I picked him up from the Greyhound station. My phone should be charging that. Hold on. Sorry, guys. This is going to be a long video, I can already tell. Okay, let's see. I want you guys to be able to see me, but I need to charge this phone. Okay, there we go. So, he was like sending stuff to my house and blah, blah, blah. Well, that weekend, I think that weekend is when I found out. I think he told me that weekend that when I went to go stay with him that his father had just passed away. I think I knew that at that point. And that he was in the process of trying to sell that house. Sorry, guys. I know y'all want to see my face probably. That he was in the process of trying to sell that house. Well, he started again sending stuff. Now, this is all in a very short period of time. So this isn't like months or anything. This is like weeks, okay? But he was sending stuff, and I just thought, well, and I'd never really been treated that way. You know, like I hadn't had somebody just like blowing, because he was blowing money. He was sending stuff my way, and we would come home and there'd be stuff on the porch, and he was like, you want to go shopping? Go shop. Like, he was just sending money, you know? And so I thought, well, and physically I probably shouldn't go too much into this. Physically, he really wasn't my type. But he was saying all the right things. And again, I thought things were kind of moving fast. But, you know, I wasn't strong enough to be like, hey, things are moving too fast for me. I did mention that at one point, and we'll get into that. So, again, I had met his roommate that one weekend. Well, fast forward into maybe like a week or two, and I had caught kind of feelings for him that weekend I went up there because I was just kind of, it was like all romanticized, if that makes sense. Like I was like, oh, well, this guy's a really nice, like I thought maybe this guy's a really nice guy, you know, and maybe I need to give the nice guy a chance because physically speaking, he really wasn't my type, and there were a couple red flags, but I kind of didn't speak on them, and I should have. So fast forward to like a week or two, maybe into talking to him. I think maybe he had come to my house one time on that Greyhound. I picked him up, and he'd stayed a couple days. And he calls me, and he says, listen, apparently he got into it with his roommate. And it sounded like kind of like a crazy situation, which kind of weirded me out too, because I was like, what the fuck? Because his roommate, he'd gotten into a fight with his roommate or something, and he was like making it all like he was just like angry when he called me to tell me the story. And he was like, my roommate, I kicked him out. He can't live here anymore. I threw all of his shit outside and blah, 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 blah. And I'm trying to think about what the storyline was. I really don't remember. I know that he kept saying his roommate was telling him that, like, he was nasty and that he was, like, a liar or whatever. But he made it sound like this roommate called his brother. Like, it was just, like, some weird drama. But regardless, he had thrown all of his shit out and was calling the police. And I thought that was, like, a lot. Like, I kind of, like, rubbed me weird because he was so angry on the phone. And he just wanted me to kind of agree with him on the scenario. And I just really didn't understand. Like, it sounded like really kind of like perpetuated. Like, he just wanted to hear me say, yeah, you're on the right. And I really couldn't say that, but that's what he wanted to hear. Because in of it just seemed like really over dramatic too. And I had met the guy, and the guy seemed like a normal guy. I mean, he's a little strange, but whatever, So regardless, I'm like, oh, okay, well, he was like, but what the red flag was, he was like really angry on the phone that day. Like, it was kind of like I kind of seen through this veil of like his rage, because I was like, this guy's really, but again, I wasn't present there. He had never been ugly to me. And I thought maybe it's like some kind of toxic masculinity stuff. Like, it's just two dudes. Like, I kind of just, again, brushed off the red flag. Well, fast forward. Now, I'm in the process of moving. I have most of my stuff, like, ready to move, boxed up and everything. And, I mean, we're planning on moving in, like, a month or so, and I was trying to look for a house and stuff of that nature. So he calls me, maybe it was like probably like maybe it was like a week or two after that. So we had known each other maybe a month. And I think we had seen each other probably about 3 times. Now, we had been talking every day. He was a little needy on that, which I thought that was kind of strange, but whatever. Again, I was trying to give the nice guy a chance. He wanted to talk a lot, and he was kind of like, he was just pushing. It felt pushy, like it felt like I wasn't ready because I just gone through a breakup. I wasn't ready to date anybody really. And he calls me and he says, he said, listen, you're trying to move and I'm trying to sell this house. Since I don't have this roommate, I'm going to be working. He was telling me because he told me he was a musician. And he said, I'm going to be working on my album at my brother's house. My brother has a house here, and it was like somewhere like close to the vicinity of where he lived. And he said, I'm not going to be home all summer. So it was like summertime at this point. He said, since I don't have my roommate, I would like, it would help me. This is pretty much how he said it. He made it sound like it would help him out if I moved up there for the summer. And that way I could work, save my money, and that would give me more time to find a place. And I'd have storage for all my stuff and blah, 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 blah. And we had a conversation. I said, I don't know if I'm ready. That kind of like, I'm not even ready to be in a relationship, much less, you know what I'm saying, moving in and doing all this stuff. Like, I don't know if that's a good idea. And he just kept on and on about it. Like, he really, like, was like, well, I'm not even going to be there for the summer. So it's like pretty much like, and if it's like, it'll be just a house for you and your daughter, while you're, and I thought, well, maybe, he kind of like, the more we talked about, the more I thought, well, maybe, However, we did have a romance. So like, I'm not going to try to act like we didn't have a romance or anything. And, so I packed up. I didn't pack up because I hadn't really moved out of my apartment at that point. I still had a lease. And so I move up. There. In hindsight's 2020. I should have known this is way too fast. That's what I should have thought. I should have just said no, but I didn't, and I went against my intuition, and I moved up there. And so we moved in. But not really, because my stuff was, again, still in my apartment. So I really hadn't moved in, per se. And there were some red flags. Do you know what I'm saying? He needed me to drive, and that was the other thing, because he didn't have his license. That was the other thing. He just needed me to drive him back and forth when he did go to record, because he was going to be staying in his brother's house recording. They were setting up with his producer or whatever to record over there. So I would be driving him back and forth because he couldn't drive. So that was the other help too. He made it sound like I was helping him out. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I thought, well, Tennessee's beautiful. It is the summer, so Emma's out of school. And I'm really not moved in per se because my stuff is still at my apartment. And I do have feelings for this guy. And it seems like, he was already talking about future stuff. I thought, well, we move in. I started noticing some really kind of controlling behavior and odd things that really red flagged me out. Or that were giving me red flags. But none of them, again, were too much. Now, I do want to say things like this because, again, there's so much information. There was stuff going on, like when I moved up there, he mentioned my daughter's. Now, this is like not even a month into knowing this guy, right? I think it was actually before I even moved in. He mentioned my daughter's password for her information, like for her, like, and me knowing my kid at the time, okay? And so at the time, she's what? Almost 16 now. So she was what? 14 or something of that nature. He casually, like somehow, and I wish I could remember exactly how this went, but he'd mentioned my daughter's password. And I thought, that was one of like the first red flags where I was like, how would he know my daughter's password, And so I asked him, I was like, why are you saying, how do you know that? And he said, oh, I just happened to see, like he like brushed it off as if he had seen something or like, and so again, it being a red flag, but me thinking, oh, this guy, like me and this guy are kind of falling in love, because that's what it felt like. It felt like we were falling in love, but things were just moving really fast. I thought that was odd, okay? So we move in, and I'm driving him back and forth to this house, but it's not just like he's gone all the time. He's pretty much there at the house most of the time. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm having to drive him back and forth pretty much every day. And granted, I was having like feelings for him. I mean, I cared about him a lot, or I thought I did, or thought I knew who he was at the time, which is funny, because how do you know somebody in that period of time? But he was just spending a lot of money. Do you know what I'm saying? He was filling up the gas tank, and then he like fixed up. I had some issues with my car, and he fixed up that Honda. So I was driving the Honda. I was still had my car, but I had some leakage and stuff going on. Like it was leaking water, and it was kind of doing weird stuff. So, but I was driving him like pretty much every day or every other day back and forth to this house, and he had his. We weren't just not around each other. It wasn't just my house, and I'm just renting it out or staying there. It was he was right up under my ass. Do you know what I'm saying? And it really felt like a lot of anxiety. It was anxiety a lot of times. I started noticing at that point that the red flags were getting heavier. In my life, I don't, for some reason, I guess because I've lived that on my own and traveled most of my life. I don't, a lot of times I'll move around in my sleep and go lay in a living room floor, or it's again, it might be odd behavior, but it's my behavior. So I like to move around a lot when I'm sleeping. And I don't really like to be smothered while I'm sleeping either. That's the other thing. I think that's probably why I move around. In past relationships, I didn't really stay in one place. Anybody that I've dated would tell you, she moves around a lot, or I'll catch her on the sofa or on the floor. And I guess it's just because I need space, because I don't like to be boxed in. So one of the issues was that I wasn't sleeping in the bed with him. He really got kind of crazy about it and said, you're going to sleep in the room. You know what I'm saying? you have to sleep in the room with me. And I was like thinking, first of all, anybody that tells me to do anything, I'm going to do the opposite, you know? So that was one way to like get me never to sleep in a bed with him at nighttime. But it was just like odd stuff like that. And then, so things just got really strange. Now, I mean, again, there's so much information, but I got a little job over there at Ruby Tuesdays too. And I was noticing more red flags. My anxiety level was going up. So for something to be like, this was supposed to be like a relaxing summer, and not relaxing, I didn't mind working, but it was supposed to be like a summer where it was like low key, you know, and he'd be gone recording, but he was like hot on my ass, and his he started showing like this real kind of like toxic masculinity side, which I was like, this is odd. I also noticed that it was everyone else's problem. So if he would tell me a story, he was talking as if it was the other person's problem. Like he also would make comments that seemed racist to me. You know what I'm saying? Like he would talk about everybody like he was better than everybody, if that makes sense. And I was like really turned off by that. I'm a human, you know, I'm a humanitarian, and I'm like equal love type of person. Like I feel like everybody, you know, has the right to be free and be who they are. You know what I'm saying? We shouldn't judge. But he would say things like, when we get into arguments, you know, like, you're nothing. That's why I saved you out of the place where you lived. And I'm thinking, no, you know what I'm saying? You didn't save us. We were moving, and we were supposed to be helping you out. Like, he just started like changing the storyline, and it became anxiety ridden. Like, it wasn't fun. Do you know what I'm saying? But I was letting things kind of slide by, because I had never dealt with a personality like that either. Like, I had never dealt with someone of this nature and he could turn really quickly. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, he would get into these rages, like if I wasn't paying him enough attention, or he found me in another room that next morning where I wasn't sleeping. That was like, you know, that was kind of a way to, you know, he just liked to show his dominance, and it was really like kind of unappealing. So by this point, I was kind of thinking, okay, I don't know if I can keep doing this. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I need to make some kind of decision. But emotionally speaking, the emotions, I was emotionally kind of pulled in. So I did care for the guy. But again, I didn't know who he was, and he would flip the script. And some of it was, I gotta say this too. Some of it was like, okay, I'm like, is this just like how men are? Like some men are, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's just kind of like dominant, because when he would be nice, he would be super nice. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't know. I knew, but I didn't know. And then there was we had gotten into an argument. So I guess I'd been at this house for maybe like 2 months by this point. We had gotten into an argument, and he spit my face. And he told me that I was nothing. And I was like, really, I was like totally like caught off guard by it. Because again, in the past like 2 months prior to that, he had some red flags, but not to that extent. Like, I was like, yo, like, that really weirded me out. At this point, I was trying to figure out how I was kind of going to get out of this situation. Like, my power bill was owed at this point at my apartment complex, because I was kind of keeping the electric on. And he convinced me, I want to say maybe he convinced me, because again, this timeline can be kind of, it's a lot. So maybe he convinced me not to pay the power bill. Like, he fully was capable of paying this power bill, because at this point we were kind of like in a relationship. Do you know what I'm saying? That's what it would be considered, you know? So like, we were romantically involved, and we were living together or whatever. But I think prior to him spitting in my face, because that was like the major red flag. I was like, oh shit, man, what have I gotten myself into? And I kind of got scared, you know? And I thought the way he was talking to me, like that I wasn't anything. I was like, who the fuck would say that? Like, it would be shit like that where I was like, oh my God, like, it like really kind of it kind of scared me, I'm gonna be honest. But I was at a loss, because I was up there in Tennessee where I didn't know anybody. I think my car had started having some issues, so I was driving the Honda. And I kind of felt like he'd made me feel like I was kind of trapped. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. And then I was second guessing myself. And at the time, I was standing in my truth, but I didn't really kind of know what was I guess it would be considered gaslighting. Like I had never dealt with this kind of behavior before, so this was all new to me. Anybody that's kind of dealt with abusive situations and stuff of that nature would probably feel the same way. So, anyways, he convinced me. I think before this incident where he spit in my face, he convinced me to don't worry about the apartment. Like, do you really need the apartment? Like, why are we paying electricity on two households? When you're living here, like, we'll just go get your stuff and blah, 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 blah. And so we did that. When he was fully capable, we were fully capable of paying the power bill at this point. But he just did. And I think that was another reason for him to kind of trap me there. So fast forward, so when he spit my face and stuff, I was kind of like appalled. Like, I was like, it made me think, like, who am I with? Like, this is really kind of freaking me out. So, there's just so much information. Okay, so, anyway, so the apartment, I still had the apartment, but I called the landlord. I tell her, I said, I'm not going to pay on this. I'm not going to sign another lease. Blah, blah, blah. So, at this point, I'm kind of like all balls deep into this house in Tennessee, right? And I guess I should mention this too. So I had gotten a job at Ruby Tuesdays, and I was doing my tarot on the side, and I was doing my tarot readings because that's kind of was like my goal. I enjoyed it. I was good at it, and Bobby was trying to figure out about how, like, should he set low, like he was having me do readings on what was going on with the house. Like, should he pull out? Should he sell it? Should he wait? Blah, 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 blah. And he was kind of asking me to do readings for that. And I was kind of a mentor in that way. He'd ask me stuff and I'd tell him I don't think now's the time, because... anyways, just to give you prior information, because I think now he talks a lot of shit about tarot readings and how they're not real, but he didn't have any problems getting readings and asking me about readings. So, but I got a job at Ruby Tuesdays, and the first night I get there, he still didn't have his driver's license. He says, I'm going to drop you off, and I'm going to go pick up some weed from my buddy's house. And I said, okay. Well, the guy never showed up to pick me up. He just didn't answer my phone calls. This is my, first night on the floor. Like, I had worked at Ruby Tuesdays, I don't know, maybe a week in training. But my first night, he takes my car and just doesn't pick up his phone. He's supposed to be going back home, which was a 5-minute drive, and the guy just disappears with my shit. And I'm like, oh my God. I call him. He's not answering. He's forwarding my phone calls. I finally get on the phone. He's like, I'm sorry. I'm like, how long are you going to be here? Like, dude, you took my fucking car. This is my first night of work. Like, what the hell? And he just didn't pick me up. I think he sent an Uber. He sent an Uber for me and just never showed up back at the house. And at this point, I'm, threatening him. I'm like, I'm going to call the cops. This is my fucking car, Well, he apologizes. He got high that night, got real fucked up, and, comes back home the next day. I'm sorry, baby. And I'm like, I can't even work. This is my first job, in Tennessee. I can't even trust this dude. But I'm kind of, I'm at all, and I should have just taken my car or taken that Honda and just driven back to Birmingham. I really should have. And at the time, Emma really wasn't staying there. I think Emma was at her dad's at the time. I got her on the weekends just because, again, I didn't really kind of know the situation at hand, and we were planning on, he was going to sell the house, and we had talked about moving back to Birmingham because my son was here with his father. And so I wasn't going to stay moved away from them, you know what I'm saying? So we were going to transition and find a place in Birmingham. He thought, well, we'll sell it and we'll move to Birmingham and get a house there. So many red flags like that. Then the whole incident where he spit in my face and told me I was nothing. And I was like, but again, financially speaking, because I didn't go back to that Ruby Tuesdays, because I was just kind of he was like, you don't even need to work. We have the money and blah, 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 blah. And it was a way for him to kind of trap me. And again, sorry guys, I should have been able to decipher. I made a lot of mistakes through these things, like trusting someone that I didn't know, first of all, off the internet. But I felt like I was kind of trapped. And fast forward, we sell the house and we moved to Birmingham. By summer was up. So me and Bobby had known each other about 3 to 4 months at this point before we're getting a place together. Things are already kind of on the brink. Do you know what I'm saying? My daughter was at her father's while we were in the process of moving. I'm helping him move up and get rid of things from his father's, because his father had just passed prior to that. So I'm not just sitting there not doing anything. Like, we're listing stuff and I'm cleaning the house and getting it ready to sell. And so that was like pretty much a full-time job. Do you know what I'm saying? And keeping up with his heavy demands, which were like sex all the fucking time, and listening to his, he was in the right. So it was kind of like I kind of felt dominated, and I kind of felt trapped. And there was actually a time that I did leave, and came home and stayed with a friend, and he convinced me to come back, So at this point, it was a class A, like an abusive kind of relationship, But we get a house. We moved to Birmingham, and we get a house in Forestdale. And he was supposed to put me on the lease, by the way, too. I was supposed to be on the lease. But he didn't let me. When we got the place, we've been staying in a bunch of B&Bs because he had the money in the bank after he sold the house, a significant amount of money in the bank. But because of his credit score and because his lack of, I don't know what else, probably the felonies that he had, the robbing of he robbed a store apparently. And that's another thing that I didn't know any of this stuff. Like, so he would tell me stuff. I didn't know that he had robbed a convenience store that, in Tennessee. And I did look him up before I moved up there, and there were some mugshots, and he had several DUIs, okay? But this guy was a charmer, again, and he had the money to back up what he was saying, and I don't know. I don't really have an excuse for why I would have dealt with this, except for I felt trapped at this point, and I didn't have my place, and my car was having issues, and I'm trying to think about my daughter and getting back to Birmingham. Do you know what I'm saying? Because by the time school starts, we need to have a place. And also, I couldn't work because my anxiety level was like, I already have really bad anxiety, and seeing the things and hearing the things that he was saying, and just how he was always up on me, like he always wanted to be around me. I didn't feel like I really had any freedom. And so, anyways, we moved to Birmingham, fast forward. But we couldn't find a place because of his credit score or something of that nature. My credit wasn't that great either, But he really wasn't listing. He wasn't trying to list anything. Like, I don't know. We just figured we would be able to find a place pretty quickly, and it wasn't that quickly. It was like a 2 to 3 week process of us literally riding around Birmingham, calling places, and staying in B&Bs. So we find a guy through a friend of mine that lived in downtown, and she says, oh, I know a guy, and he'll rent to you. He's got a cool little place. I called him to see if he's got anything, because he was her landlord. And he said, he won't check your credit or anything, you'll just need a deposit. She said, but he says he has a house. Here's the number. So we call the guy, and the guy sends us pictures. Well, it's a beautiful house. I was like, yeah, this is where we need to be. Plus, I knew that he was associated with someone I knew, so I knew it was probably going to be a win-win situation. Plus, we didn't really have the money we had it, but to stay in a B&B every night, you know what I'm saying, and then constantly having to get up, it was just kind of like a hassle. So we get the place. That was the beginning of hell for me, pretty much. That started it. I was doing my readings. My readings were becoming, I was doing very well off. Like, things were progressing, and I was doing very well. Bobby had got me some magnets for my car, and had gotten some signs to put out, some like $100. I don't know how much he spent on that, but regardless, it was like 4 signs and then 2 magnets for my car. But plus, I was going around town putting up signs and stuff, so my business was starting to flourish. Bobby wasn't working. I'm not going to say that there wasn't some drug usage going on in the midst of it, because there was. I didn't realize what I was getting myself into with him. Okay, let's just put it that way. So I noticed some things with him, and he would get irate when I mentioned them. He also had some kind of porn addiction that was pretty off the wall, but regardless, I'm not judging, whatever, about the porn addiction or anything of that nature. But we move in and things get crazy really quick. The first weekend that we were there, he left our dog out. Me and Em went to sleep, and he left the dog out. And when we woke up the next morning, I'm like, "Where's Luna?" You know what I'm saying? Like, where? I think we had been in there like 2 days maybe. And he's like, I don't know. And he had so much stuff. He was like a hoarder, and it was like, he was just like, I couldn't ever keep anything. It was just like really crazy. Like, I felt like I had no stability with him because I couldn't keep things clean. He would just wreck the fucking place, and he'd go on a tangent. Well, we'd signed a 6-month lease. See, I'm just like over talking myself. Let me go back. So when we moved to Birmingham, I was supposed to be on that lease for that house in Forestdale, but he had me sit in the car. Like, and again, I should have known better, but he was like, let me just go in and deal with this. We'll get the paperwork and get the keys and blah, 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 blah. And when he came out, I said, shouldn't I go in? Like, I'm going to be on the lease. He's like, they already know. I'll have them put you on it, whatever. He brings out the paper, and I'm on the lease. My name's on the lease. So I think I'm on the lease, right? I mean, I didn't have any question. At this point, I didn't really have any reason not to trust. Like, there was weird things, again, that were going on. And it was a red flag. But I just wanted to get in this house, too, because we were literally living from B&B to B&B. And so I wanted to get into my home. You know what I'm saying? We signed a 6-month lease. We get there again. So I start doing my tarot. We put out the signs. And I get a job back at the old restaurant I used to work at. It's Surin. So I'm waiting tables over there. And he's in and out of town. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He's not in and out of town. Let me backtrack. Emma's gone one weekend, and there's just so much information. Okay. We move in. The second day we were there, okay, we had a puppy. Not a puppy. We had a Chihuahua, Luna, that me and Emma had for years. We pass out, like, because we're trying to clean up stuff. It's our first couple nights. We're trying to get settled in and get things moved around. We go to sleep, and we wake up, and Luna's not anywhere to be found in our house. And I'm like, where is Luna? I don't know, blah, blah, blah. Me and Emma freak out. I'm like, oh, my God. We get in the car, and there's Luna. I don't want to cry. We go to look for Luna, and she's in the middle of the street. And I was trying to cover Emma's eyes because I wasn't expecting that. So I was like, oh my God. Well, Emma knew that Bobby had let Luna out. She said he let her out before we went to sleep. Well, he never let her back in, apparently, is what happened. So then we were there for a week or two. And Emma's at her dad's. And so Bobby is irate. He's acting a fool. I've never seen a temper tantrum quite like this one. So this was like the first explosion that I had ever seen. He's like, and that was the other thing. When we would get into arguments, he wouldn't get out of my space. He would pull on me. He would physically he would be in my space. Bobby's 6 foot, 6'2" maybe. At the time, he was over 200, but well over 250. I'm 5'3", and I was a lot smaller at the time, so I was probably 130 or something of that nature. He would get in my space, but it would be weird because he would be in my space and wouldn't let me move around, so I couldn't move around. He would want me to tell him everything was okay and tell him I loved him. It would be really tell me you love me, no, and he would call me mommy. So it'd always be and I thought that was really weird. By this point, I knew some issues that he had with his mom, and he did say that his dad was very abusive. But again, at this point, I don't know what to believe on half the stuff he was telling me. But at this particular argument, he was I think I told him I don't want to do this anymore. Like, because things had started to get really crazy and he was just real demanding. Again, it was like living with like a tyrant. Like, it really was. Like, it was like I could never relax. Like, it was always, I had to walk on eggshells with him about how I said things, what I said, if I hurt his feelings. You know, his feelings were always hurt, you know, and so, you know, I always have to be like, I'm sorry, even when I wasn't wrong. Like, that would have to be how I shut him up. It's like, I'm sorry, okay, jeez. But this particular incident, when Emma was gone to her dad's, he went on a tangent. And he didn't want me to move. No, mama, tell me you love me. And he was like flipping out. And I said, I don't want to be, like, I can't do this anymore with you. Like, I can't, I just can't, you know. And that blew him over the edge. Now, typical Bobby behavior, you fast forward, Bobby will not get out of your space if he's mad. He just won't, you know. I tried to get in the car. He hops, this is Bobby's go-to. He hopped in my car and just he was causing a scene. But before he hopped in my car and we left, the reason why I left and hopped in my car was because he started, when he would pitch temper tantrums, he would destroy everything. But he made it into my daughter's room and was knocking shit off of her fucking wall, beating his head into the wall. There was blood on the wall. Like, he would lose his shit. And he was beating his head, and we ended up in the bedroom because I'm trying to get away from him. Like, leave me the fuck alone. Like, I'm telling you, get out of my fucking space, you know? And he, like, flips out, and he's like, I'm going to kill myself. And, like, starts beating his head into the wall. And I had never seen quite this behavior before, okay? So this was new to me. And he breaks my daughter's, like, vintage shit that, like, we had... And we didn't have much because we were supposed to go back and get most of my stuff. And he didn't help me, you know, but I helped him move his whole father's house and sold shit. Like, so we lost a lot in the move from Birmingham, me and my daughter did. Like, we took our basic necessities and we didn't get much more, you know, like, because again, we were moving 2 households. It was just like a lot of work. But the things we had were things that we loved, you know. And some of the pieces that he broke on my daughter's stuff were like vintage pieces that he fucked up. And when he did that shit with his head and there was like blood come, I was like, oh, hell no. I was like, you need to go get help. You know what I'm saying? I gotta get, like, so I hopped in the car. He jumps in the car with me and is screaming and beating his head, like, tell me you love me, baby, don't leave me. And I was like, you're gonna have to go. Like, he's like, I'll do whatever, I'll go to rehab, I'll do it. And that was his go-to. I'll get therapy. Come to find out, fast forward like a year, you know, almost a year later, and that was his like thing. He would never go to rehab or to therapy. Let's just keep it that way, okay? Never. That would always be a way for him to work his way back in. But he jumps in my car. He won't get out of my car. So I'm at the Family Dollar up the street in Forestdale, and I have to get this guy. I'm like, will you please call the police? Like, get this. So this guy's like, we're kind of in the hood in that place. So he's kind of like, you know, and I'm like, get out of my fucking car, dude. Get out of my car. So I finally, like, he convinced me. He's like, I'm sorry. I'll go to therapy and blah, 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 blah. And he won't get out of my vehicle. And I'm like, whatever, Bobby. I got shit to do today. I was like, you need help, you know. I'll get help, I promise. I'll get into therapy. I've got a psychiatrist. I'll call and blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, okay, whatever. And he's like, I'll take you shopping. Well, that did it for me. Probably shouldn't have. I was like, well, you owe me. You know, you broke my daughter's shit. We're going on a shopping spree. The shopping sprees would never even be worth it. It was just, it's like, it would never even be worth it. Like, hence why I left. You know, like, I can't, there's not amount of dollar signs that are going to keep me with a bunch of fucking chaos. I just don't, and here's the other thing. He would be, okay, so I ditched him that day. He ended up flipping out again because I didn't tell him I loved him. He didn't believe that I loved him. Like, tell him I love him like I mean it. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, I don't know what you want me to tell you, blah, blah, blah. So I leave him that day. I get home. I'm like, you're going to have to figure out a way to get home, Bobby. Like, I, like, left him in downtown because he's, like, sort of flipping out and jumping out of my car. And that would be the thing. He caused scenes. And I'm the type of girl, I'm very protective of my energy now. Like, this is really, like, showing me a whole lot. But I've always been kind of, like, I don't have a whole lot of friends. Like, I don't really keep anybody around me. I have a very, very close-knit circle. It's, like, my kids and 1 or 2 other people. So what people might think is mysterious isn't me being mysterious. I just keep a very small crowd and I don't shit where I eat. And this guy loves to shit where he eats. And so after we got home and I left him, he got back and I said, you're going to have to leave. Like, I can't, it's either you or me. Like, and we have this house now with Emma. He said, I'll go to Indiana and go stay with my dad. He's like, I'll get into some therapy or whatever. I'll go stay with my dad, or stay with not his dad, his brother. And apparently he had an offer, like somebody had offered him a job back where he used to work in Indiana. Like this, like, farm place, I don't know. And as a cook or whatever. So I said, well, I'd like you to go. You know what I'm saying? I'd like you to go and we'll work things out. Well, only if you're going to work things out. You know, I'll go and I'll send you the money home every week and I'll pay all the bill, all the electricity. And I said, okay, that will work, because, you know, Emma was in school registered at this point. I'm thinking I'm on the lease as well. Like, fast forward, I wasn't even on the lease. Like, he had lied about all that on two different locations, because we moved again to another place, which was the last place I moved with him. But and we'll get into all that. This is going to be several different videos, but and again, there's still information in between all this that was like red flags too. But and the other thing, we got into a fight right before, I think it was like maybe after that, before he moved to Indiana. But we got into a fight. I said, get out, Bobby, because I would make him leave. Like, I'm not fixing to have that shit at my fucking house. And he it's loud. We have neighbors and shit. And my neighbors are starting to notice, like, how crazy it's getting. And so I'm like, I would tell him to get out, you know, because I thought I was on the lease. I saw my signature on there. I thought I was on the lease. I'm not putting up with this, or I'll call the cops, because I would have. And I had many times. And so I'm trying to think about what I was going to say. Golly. I should probably do this in like a series of like 10 videos and go a little bit slower. So, yeah. So we decided that he would go to Indiana and come home on the weekends or every other weekend when he could, right? And he would pay the bills, and I get my, you know, I do my tarot, and I would get a job. Like, I was going to get another little side job. So at this point, that's what I was planning on doing. And so that's what ended up happening. He left. And what should have been better was him still not getting into therapy, and I was still the problem. And if I didn't pick up the phone when he would want to talk, which was like all the fucking time, or didn't respond to him, he'd make my life a living hell, you know? And so I decided to not, I told him, I said, I just can't deal with this, you know? So he said, well, I'll just cut off your electricity. You know, I'll just cut off the electricity. And you won't get shit from me except for a hard time. I'm going to make you and Emma's life miserable, you know? And so he stood behind that. And so, again, I felt kind of trapped because I was serving and doing my readings, but it really wasn't that much, you know what I'm saying? Not enough to really live off of at the time. And plus, I'd kind of grown accustomed to a certain kind of living, I'll be honest with you, you know? I mean, he made sure that me and Emma were taken care of and beforehand. And so there was no way I could pay. Our rent was like $1,000, and there was no way I was going to be able to pay that. And I kind of felt like cut off from, because I had to spend so much time dealing with him, that I kind of felt cut off from my family, you know, and from the friends that I did have. Things just started getting really dark for me. And then I didn't feel like I could really talk about it to anybody, you know. I felt real lonely. So he cuts off the electricity. He says, the only way I'm going to turn it back on. I'm like, what the fuck, man? And then he put me on Craigslist. Here was the other thing. I started getting phone calls. He had put me up on Craigslist saying that I was selling my car with a picture of me on Craigslist. So one day I just wake up, no electricity. He's like, I told you, you know, you're either going to be with me or you're not going to have anything. I'm going to make your life a living hell. That's pretty much verbatim what he said. And I start getting, my phone is blowing up. You know, it's just blowing up. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? Come to find out, he put me on Craigslist and said I was selling my car. My phone was just, I mean, it was that was the beginning of like, okay, whatever. So he comes home that weekend. I'm like, whatever, dude, just come home. We need our electricity. He's like, only if you tell me, we're going to work it out. Well, I was telling him what he wanted to hear at the time. I was really unhappy. And I was telling him what he wanted to hear because me and Emma needed a place to stay. I did love him. I did love him. But again, I didn't know who he was because he was like, his whole personality was changing on me. And I'm like, what the fuck? So that weekend he comes home and he turns on the power like immediately, like, okay, blah, blah, blah. And I want to say that weekend, again, he starts with his shit. So we didn't really live that much together in that house. That was like a 6-month lease. But he starts some shit. And then he would get online and he would get on these lives and watch these other women on lives and then lock me out of my own bedroom. So that was like a go-to. Like I would be in lingerie trying to be sexy or something, and then he would get on there and pay these other women. He'd want me to watch and stuff. And I'd watch with him. Like I didn't care. But before you know it, I'd be out of the fucking bedroom and locked out of my own bedroom. Like every fucking time. And I'm like, this is fucking weird. First of all, because if you know what Bobby looks like and you know what I look like, I don't think I'm that special, but clearly you'll notice a difference, okay? And he was locking me out of my own bedroom in lingerie and then paying people, sending women money. And there was times where women were showing up at my house, like in my driveway, and I'm like, what the fuck, man? He was doing a bunch of weird shit. Well, we get into an argument, and this is when I knew shit was really getting bad. He's like, I'm like, just get out, Bobby. And he's like, I'm going to put you all over the internet and say you're a man. And I thought, that's so fucking, I was like, weird flex, man. Like, why would you say, like, who the fuck says that? But whatever. I was like, just fucking get out. Well, this is where we're going to stop this reading. And I feel like I need to get my thoughts together. And again, I've been thinking about doing this for like a while, but I'm going to upload this. And then tomorrow I'll go ahead and figure out where I stopped here and start back. We still have like 2 more houses to deal with, 2 more moves, and a lot of juicy shit about the hacking and the stalking. But what I do want to say before I get off, I guess that this should have been my intro. Robert has posted a bunch of stuff. I fled. I just want to make this really clear. And again, I probably should have put this on my post in the beginning. Yeah. Doing things backwards. But I have been away from Bobby for a year now. I fled to a town outside of Birmingham with my daughter. And things got so bad that I started having to form a trail for my protection as far as the legal, my legal documentation. I never had Bobby locked up, but I was documenting everything. I documented when he bashed my face in. I documented when he broke in my home on several different occasions here, which he's not on the lease here. When he's been stalking me and harassing me for the past year. If he can't have me, no one else will. Well, Bobby has gotten away with a lot. The reason why Bobby is dealing with the stuff that Bobby's dealing with now is not because of me. That's because of a neighbor that overheard some stuff, and that's because you can't just abuse people. Normally when you end a relationship, you're supposed to walk away, and he's been given every opportunity just to leave me alone, and he's just not done that. And so when you continue to harass and stalk and scare women and children, at some point the legal system is going to catch up with you. So I also want to say this too, that he has said a lot of stuff. He's posted a lot of stuff, videos. He was apparently videotaping a lot of the stuff, videos of me. And in all those videos, everything I'm saying is completely accurate. So I'm not gonna say that what he's posting isn't what it is, because those are videos of me saying what I'm saying. Were they caught in the heat of the moment when I was pissed off? Yes. Was what I was saying accurate and the truth? Absolutely. So, and I have paperwork, many documents, over 70 reports to suffice for that. But what he's trying to do is make it look like I have a mental health issue. I have PTSD now, for sure. But I've been in therapy many times, and I don't have any kind of mental problems. However, he started causing paranoia as well with his behavior. But I do want to say that as far as what's going on the internet and how he's trying to make me look, that's why I've been kind of staying back. I don't have anything to prove to anyone, so I'm sharing my story because it's just my story, and it's my channel, and I can do what I want to do. But he's been indicted, so this isn't something. There's been enough evidence for him to go to grand jury, so that's not something. And this isn't any kind of charges I'm pushing. Am I standing my ground about it and making sure I show up at court dates? I absolutely am, because he has a lot of court stuff going on in many different counties. Okay, so it's not just. But this is something that the state's picked up, and of no doing of, now I'm an active participant, and I have been in the last year because I have to stick to my boundaries, because the guy's still to this day trying to fuck with me. If I can't have you, no one else will. Well, we want to start pulling out documents, we can, but I don't need to do that unless other people. If y'all have questions on any of this stuff, I'll prove my documents. I'm going to go ahead and pull these out, my legal documents and all the reports. But there's enough evidence to actually indict him. So that's not something I do. I'm not a grand jury. I'm not a DA representative. I'm none of that. And what he is being charged with in Birmingham, in Jefferson County, is something that the state had to pick up. That's not of my doing. I didn't call the cops to have him arrested, although I should have called the cops many times on his ass, okay? But that was something that a neighbor heard, and that's an incident that happened. Also followed up with evidence. I don't decide who goes to, what goes to grand jury and what doesn't. So, that's all hearsay. Do you know what I'm saying? The actual facts are that there is enough evidence that has been supported and enough documentation to prove that this guy needs to be held accountable. And so, again, we'll get into all that. But as of right now, I'm just going to stand by and just go ahead and continue my story. And again, there's going to be a lot of specifics in this, because this wasn't just a case of gaslighting or abuse, physical abuse, which that was a lot of it. This guy is a narcissist and a sociopath. And so I don't think he's just done this to me because of stories that I've heard. I think there's a long trail of this happening to many different people. And I'm not going to sit back and just be quiet anymore. I think that's what he wants me to do. He wants me to be quiet. And this isn't about him anymore. He's taken up enough of me and my daughter's time and energy. And we've been living in fear for so long that I'm no longer going to do that. And there's too many other people that are going through situations that were similar to, I don't want to get emotional, to, not to quite to this extent. This is like a Lifetime movie kind of shit. It's been a real rough ride, and he's tried to defame my character in many different ways, why I've stayed quiet and just wanted to heal, and so did my daughter. So whatever he's going through is of his own doing, and the justice system. So maybe don't play with fire if you don't want to get burned. You know what I'm saying? And at some point, it's really been a long road. Like, he should have been held accountable a long time ago. This guy still is stalking to this day on all my social media. I mean, even if you go to his profile, he's following me. I don't know how he's following me when I have him blocked on everything, and he was sitting, apparently, like, even on his YouTube channel, like, when he posted that, I said, I'm going to sue you, because that's exactly what I'm going to do for defamation. I plan on suing him, and I plan on having my name cleared for my business, because it's really taken, a lot of the stuff he was doing was in secret, on platforms that I don't even know. I know I found myself on Reddit at some point with thousands of viewers that were looking at my shit. He had also put me online, so I've had many people come to me online that were thinking they were talking to me, and that they were sending money to people that knew my physical address. Still to this day, people are like, hey, what's up? And I'm like, I don't know who you are. I've never talked to you. Like, sure, I've talked to you. I'm like, well, I hope you haven't, sent anybody that you thought you were talking to that was me, that wasn't me, money. And there's been a multitude of men that have come forth and said that they've sent a significant amount of money to who they thought was me. But that was not me. So the guy is just creating, he's not only has he disturbed our peace and done a lot of stuff for me and my daughter. I mean, me and my daughter are currently in therapy because of this. He has received financial funds and then cut me off from being able to speak with other people. He's hacked into my phone, my daughter's phone, and we'll get into that. And I have proof on all of that stuff as well. So it's been a nightmare. It's been a real nightmare, but the nightmare is over, and now is where I get justice. It's about time. It's been a wild ride. So we'll get into it tomorrow. And thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. I will do my best to answer any of them. I know, again, that I've been quiet, and that probably, in a way, I thought, well, maybe it might have looked suspicious, but I really have had to stay quiet for my mental health and just for my security, me and my daughter's security as well. I didn't want to get on there and have people showing up at my house. There has been people that have showed up at my house, you know what I'm saying, random strangers. So I have to protect me and my daughter, but now is the time where I'm going to start speaking out about it. And that's it. So thank you guys. Love y'all. Bye.